Fantastic messages coming in response to our conversation about Keir Starmer and Labour. Will you ever vote Labour again? Alan, Starmer is hopeless, appeasement king, spineless and of no substance, a woke empty space. What I love about you is that you don't pull your punches and you don't mince your words. Denise, after voting Labour for 40 years, I ditched them as they were willing to make me vote again on Brexit. Keir was behind that policy. Meanwhile, Peter says, yes, Trump said some stupid things, but he achieved huge amounts. So much so that he frightened the mainstream media and Democrats into complete overreaction. Trump's agreement with the Taliban was conditional on the Taliban's behaviour, but Biden's withdrawal was unconditional. Imbecilic, just as Blair said. Biden, says Peter, has been a disaster. I'll get some more of your feedback shortly. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Meanwhile, medical students, or as my rather talented producer Daniel is calling them, dirty doctors, are demanding the right to use sex work to help fund their studies. These dirty doctors, I think that's going to stick, I'll be honest with you, have called for the British Medical Association to work with universities to recognise and support students engaging in sex work to protect them from expulsion. One might argue the natural next step is a sexually free society, whilst others may say that this degrading and undignified act of selling your body for money is very, very bad for the NHS. Joining me now is James Cowe, ex-medical professional turned OnlyFans content creator. We spoke recently. Great to have you back on the show, James. And I'm delighted to welcome Richard Lucas, leader of the Scottish Family Party. Now, I know that you understand, you feel, James, this to be a complex issue. So what is your view about trainee doctors doing sex work? Is it a good or a bad thing?
I'm very much on the fence with this one, Mark. To be honest with you, I left healthcare before I started doing OnlyFans because it didn't sit right with me, purely because of the image of what society has on it. It's deemed wrong, and maybe with the issues of families and clients and the problems that may arise with that. It's just opening up a whole can of worms with dealing with families. And, when I was working in healthcare, it was just quite an issue. So I totally understand why not, but also it's a bigger issue with sex workers and how we're perceived.
Yes, I mean, clearly, there are many medical students who face major financial challenges just handling, the cost of being a student. And sex work, it's perhaps an attractive option to some of them. I mean, can you blame them for doing it just for the money, James?
And this is exactly sort of what I was saying earlier. It's how can we blame them? I mean, on the money they're being paid, they're students, they've got very small budgets. Where else do they go? It's McDonald's, £8 something an hour. It's totally understandable. I saw this as a longer term work for me. So I made the decision to leave and then start. But then there's some people that just need the extra money, whilst they're studying. So it is understandable.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's a very sort of challenging situation if you find yourself having to sell your body for sex. But Richard Lucas, leader of the Scottish Family Party, it's a reasonable alternative to making hamburgers in McDonald's, isn't it? Showing people your baps.
Well, no, for lots of reasons. I think it's really important that the medical profession is held in high esteem. I mean, we put our life in their hands routinely. So if someone engages in what's widely seen as such grossly disreputable behaviour, that's just not compatible with maintaining the profile that the medical profession needs to uphold.
I mean, I'm not sure, Richard, whether I care if I'm treated by a doctor in A&E that they've, performed an erotic display online earlier in the day. If they saved my life, they saved my life.
I think it's an insight into the person's character, though, because people go to doctors. There's the medical side. There's also the wider emotional sharing, seeking wisdom for life more broadly. And if someone's demonstrated that their personal values are so distorted that they think being a prostitute is morally acceptable and is a wise course of action, then the thought of particularly young people going and confiding in that doctor and seeking their advice about the direction of their life, I think that's just very concerning.
However,
I
Richard,
totally see your point.
Yeah, go on, James.
Sorry. I totally see your point, and that's exactly why I left before I started my work that I'm doing now, with respect to those regards, 100%. But also, as I see it, not so much for me with what I believe in, but these people are asking for that because maybe the pay's not great. And, you know, it's understandable. These people are desperate for money. They've got huge loans. I personally couldn't make that decision. But I know obviously people are asking for that, and it's really interesting.
But James, isn't this an example of how society judges sex workers? And why should we judge them?
Exactly. And I think this is an age-long thing. You know, as I said last time I was on, I fell into this work. It was never an overnight. I didn't wake up and go, oh, hello, I'm a hooker today. It just sort of happened because of Instagram and the way social media led me into this job. So as much as I am a sex worker, I was never destined to be one. So it's really interesting, you know, the areas that are cropping up, and it is a huge income, and it's hard for people to say no, and I think that's what's happening.
Yes, I mean, Richard, I just wonder, in terms of the way that we judge sex workers, you know, perhaps there's this idea that they're unclean, and that's actually a really unfair label, given the fact that most sex workers are fastidiously careful about their own safety and about hygiene and about taking protection.
I think they're not the heart of the issue, though. I wouldn't use a term such as unclean. I'm not sure anyone would use a term such as that. But let's just look at the facts, though. I think being involved in prostitution harms prostitutes. I think it causes, in the longer term, it causes emotional damage, undermines their ability to form relationships. The clients of prostitutes are also harmed because they often fall into addiction and obsession. And again, it disrupts their ability to form healthy sexual relationships. It harms families as well. A lot of prostitutes are basically serial adulterers. And when that's discovered, that can result in family breakdown. That's a big deal, particularly for children. And it harms society. For a healthy society, you want stable family life where sex is directed towards loving, committed relationships, procreation, and stable family life. Whereas prostitution steers sexuality in a totally different direction, a direction that's not positive at all. So it's not a matter of like clean or unclean. I'm just talking about the consequences. This is not something that has a good outcome for lots of people throughout society.
Richard, I mean, you're a dynamic...
I think prostitution is one thing.
Yeah.
What I do is a completely different thing. I don't sleep with people for money. I just take pictures of myself, and people pay to see them. I've never actually had sex with anyone and posted that online. So technically what I'm doing isn't prostitution, and a lot of what these people are asking for might not be that. They might just be taking pictures of themselves in the nude, which is considered an art in some cases. I totally understand your concern. I really do, because I think we need a safe environment in healthcare, 100%. You know, I worked in healthcare for 6 years.
Could I answer about the form of sex worker involved? I mean, all I'm going to say here, I know it's very challenging to you. I don't take that lightly, but this is my feeling. I feel that even what you do is exploiting your clients. Because what sexuality is designed for part of what it's designed for is to create an emotional bond between people, a mutual emotional bond. Where I would suggest that what you're doing is you're using that emotional bond in order to hook people. Instead of hooking them into a loving relationship, you're hooking them into a commercial relationship. And I feel that that's exploitation. So even the type of sex work that you're involved in, I feel it's very morally problematic. I say, and I realize I'm here on TV and in challenging something really important to you. I don't take that lightly, but that is my view of what you're doing.
Would you call James a prostitute, Richard?
I don't think it would fulfill most people's definition of being a prostitute, no.
But James, your reaction?
You know, it's like I said, I mean, before I started this interview, I wanted to sit on the fence purely because I see both sides and see both angles, and I try to be as fair as possible. Exploitation, I think it's a product, and you offer a product. It's like marketing. I spend a lot of time. It is a full-time job for me, and people get value from what I offer. This industry has been around for a long, long time. So it would be sad to say that all those years of sort of abuse this industry's got, that we're still thinking that way. But if that's the way it is, then, we've still got work to do.
Richard?
I think that answer didn't actually address the point I made at all. I feel it is exploitative to hook people into a form of sexual relationship and then exploit that in order to make money out of it.
But Richard,
so that's what prostitutes do. That's
not
the
just
same
a
with
hobby. Richard, is what James does? He's a really good-looking guy and clearly an intelligent chap as well. He's an entrepreneur. And he's actually providing a service to perhaps lonely people or even people in relationships that are not sexually fulfilling. And those customers are able to enjoy what he does and not be unfaithful to their partner. You could argue it's a very moral position.
But what's the long-term effect? Does it lead people into personal satisfaction throughout their life, getting sort of online sexual highs? I don't believe it does. I believe that directs people down a road that ultimately
Richard,
is unsatisfying.
better than having an affair,
I think a good analogy is drug dealers. Now, a drug dealer provides a service, provides people with what they want, but what they want, even though they might enjoy it in the short term, in the longer term can be addictive and ultimately harmful to people. So I think there are substantial parallels there.
But Richard, you are a dynamic chap. You're a politician in Scotland, the founder of the Scottish Family Party. But you're not going to succeed in calling time on the world's oldest profession, are you?
Well, the Scottish Parliament at the moment is going, I think soon it's going to look at criminalising the buying of sex. So I think that is seriously on the cards. Our policy is
that's going to upset a lot of
buying
people.
and selling sex. And now, would that eliminate prostitution? No, it wouldn't, in the same way that making murder illegal doesn't eliminate murder. But the fact is, I think that law would be beneficial for society. It would protect a lot of people from the harms that flow from the sex industry and from prostitution.
But Richard, I respect your Christian faith, but are you not superimposing your religious values on others who may not be religious at all and have every right to do whatever they want with their body, including charge money for it?
Now, it's interesting there, because I haven't presented any arguments at all from a religious perspective.
Slightly
all my arguments have been from the point of view of harms done to people.
Look, you've
yes, I think it is a moral judgment.
A moral judgment about what James does, haven't you? You've said it's exploitative and you've implied that it's wrong morally.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's wrong for those reasons I stated, which were rational reasons. But also, I think when it comes to morality, also conscience plays a part. A very important part of moral thinking is just what we know. We know something's wrong without having to reason about it. Our conscience tells us that something's wrong. So when it comes to sexuality in the context of a commercial agreement, that's just something that my conscience, and I think the majority of people's conscience, screams to them loud and clear, that's wrong. That's something Richard, that hadn't ought to be happening.
Hypothetically, Richard, if I was to present you with an example of a medical student that had sold naked pictures of themselves online, they've not engaged in any sex, but they've just, they've actually done something similar to what James does, which is just essentially to have themselves photographed looking absolutely gorgeous, looking very alluring to a willing subscriber. Would you seriously end their career prospects and have them struck off by the NHS?
I think how we deal with individuals would depend on their individual circumstances. I think the BMA should uphold the principle that sex work is incompatible with being a doctor. Now, if someone finds themselves involved in sex work, if someone makes a bad decision, in my view, at some point, I'm not saying that should be the end of their career, strike them off, they'll never be a doctor again. There might be a place for some restoration, compassion, whatever. But as a matter of principle for the BMA, I think they should have a position that sex work of any sort is incompatible with being a member of the medical profession.
James, I mean,
I
is
think,
being a glamour model incompatible with being a good doctor?
I think sex workers have been around for a long time and will continue to be so, as much as big corporations try and sort of minimize the issue, and that's usually a financial issue for them. As much as they try and minimize it, we're not going anywhere. It's always going to be a natural product. And, it's just really sad that we still have these views. As much as I respect them, I think, everyone deserves to exist. And if you choose a certain job in your life that isn't necessarily hurting anyone, then you should be allowed to do that.
But that's the whole point, is it is hurting people. That's what I've been saying over and over again. It hasn't been replied. It does hurt people, many, many people. And that's been my point.
But
I support a lot of people as well.
My feeling, Richard, is that you don't like the principle of sex work, but you haven't really identified why it's an issue for medical professionals. It's a rather blanket judgment that you've made.
I think when it comes to professions, we've got to look at public opinion. As I say, I haven't seen statistics, but I imagine a substantial majority of the population feel that it is morally reprehensible to exchange money for sexual services. They feel that that's really gravely immoral, and they feel that that gives an insight into a real flaw in someone's character. And I think that would undermine people's trust in the medical profession, and it would undermine their confidence in their judgment. And there's also the point that the doctors don't just dispense pills, they also dispense life wisdom. People come and share where they are in their life, where they want to go, various issues that are not strictly medical. And I feel that someone who sort of condones sex work, enters into sex work themselves, is not a suitable mentor, if you like, for a young person in Britain.
James, briefly, if you will, final words.
I think live and let live, stay as positive as we can. And, it's been going on for a long time now. And hopefully one day we'll find peace in this industry. I'm not saying I'm going to be in this industry forever, but I think everyone deserves respect if they're not causing harm to others. And that's basically how I feel. So,
can I thank you both for a fascinating and very civil and well-balanced debate? James Cowe is a nurse turned OnlyFans content creator, and Richard Lucas is from the Scottish Family Party. My sincere thanks to both of you for that. What's your view? How do you feel about the idea that your GP or even your heart surgeon is somebody that when they were a student did sex work? Does that bother you? Is there a conflict of interest? Can you blame them for trying to top up their finances given the enormous cost of being a medical student? GBviews at gbnews.uk.